Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the official launch of BlackSlaveRevolts.org. As in our African tradition, we always begin with libations. These are some of our ancestors who revolted: Solitude, Taki, Nanny, Queen Imboje, Tula, Mary Thomas, Cuffy, Toussaint, Delgas, Coop, Ya Santawa, Queen Nzinga, Julian Fedon, Hamida Abdallah, Nancy Griggs, Surreal, Fermina, John Horse, Makandal Daga, Moses Dickinson, Kofi Atta, and many, many more. Okay. So this is the website that you've all been waiting for. So as you can see, scrolling on the net presenter are some videos. I brought in 5 graphic artists to do animations of revolts of their choice. And then I thought, if you do not go to that particular revolt, you will not see the wonderful work that they did. So I selected 5 of them, and I have them at the top. And as a net presenter, I will show you one of them as we move along. Then I have a video of myself giving an overview of the map. This video provides some background information on slavery and the beginning of the onslaught of enslavement. Just here, I like to add something about language. Many people do not like to use the term slavery, slave. They want to use enslavement. However, the internet is word driven. So people aren't going to look for African and African descendants slave revolts. So I chose to use Black slave revolts to just make it easier to access. And then I have explore the map. So this is the home site. The inspiration, of course, for this project came from enslavement. So here I have the transatlantic enslavement and trafficking of African people. I had 3 major objectives. Of course, number 1 is to pay homage to our ancestors. Number 2 is to challenge the narrative of minimal resistance to slavery. And 3, demonstrate the diasporic nature of the practice that is the foundation of Pan-Africanism. So I began with now my second favorite map by Joseph Harris of Howard University. And here he cites through his research where Africans were taken and where they were sent. And we can see that Africans were taken out of the entire continent, not just West Africa. And once coastal populations were depopulated, then people were brought in from the interior. And we see that Africans went as far as Nagasaki, Japan, and we have Australia. So I want to give people an overview of where African people live. Now, the largest number of Africans, estimated 5.5 million, went to Brazil. Brazil today has the largest population of people of African descent off the African continent. Now, here are some ports where Africans were taken from. These are actually my travel videos, which are not professionally done, but I was encouraged to put them anyway, as many people may not see the ports in places like Zanzibar, Pemba, Tanzania, that we don't hear much about. Badagry. At the port in Badagry, Nigeria, the docent was the great grandson of King Moby, who led the trade of Africans in that area. And the area was very, very impoverished. Sometimes we don't think about the so-called trade of African people, how it affected both sides. Here I have some images of enslavement. And one I like to point out is Brazil, because here slavery lasted till 1888. So we have actual photographs. Now to the map. Here you're going to see up to 300 revolts. There are over 400 that are documented, but here I have 256 on land and 58 at sea. So we see that the ancestors fought back everywhere they were sent. Notice we have the depopulation of Africa. There were 700 million Africans in 1500. By 1900, there are only 90 million. That means Africa lost 80% of its population. Notice on the coast of Africa, you see little ships. I don't know if you can see them clearly, but anyway, they're little ships, but they're markers. On my original Google map, I had 100 along the coast. And then I decided to go down to 58, where there was more ample information. Now, there are documented 400 ship revolts based on the research by Eric Taylor. From his research, I took 100 that I considered successful. What was my criteria? They killed the entire crew or they got away. And then from that 100, I came down to 58. And if you look at if you open all 58 of them, you would get a global view of what the ship revolts look like. Now, some way, the Smithsonian Institute came across this map on the web. And they have asked me if they could use my markers. So they will be using the 100 ship markers in an upcoming exhibit at the Smithsonian called In the Wake of Slavery that is going to open December 13th in Washington, and then it's going to travel to 5 countries. So I'm very, very, very excited about that. All right, so as you go on the map, there are 2 ways. You see the legend over here. There are 2 ways to access the markers. I use the colors of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. Black is before 1700s, green 1700s, red 1800s, and yellow into the 1900s. So here's a ship revolt. Now, once you open them, you will see some of them have video, images, text, of course, more images, more text. This one had a lot because it was the middle passage. So here, I would like to show you a video.
Sacred grove of deadly touch, we fly. Into words, our fires cry. Horrific, hollow agreements made in watery graves. And again, some jump for the rest to stay. And again some leaped, till all would not die. And again some sank, for the rest to survive. And again some flew, so the rest could try. Mingled blood at the tip of our arrows, marooning in the hills, humming in the canebrake. We gather and die to live again. Sacred grove of deadly touch, we fly. Into words our fires cry. Horrific hollow agreements made in watery graves. And again some jump, for the rest to stay. And again some leaped, till all would not die. And again some sank, for the rest to survive. And again some flew, so the rest could try. Mingled blood at the tip of our arrows, marooning in the hills, humming in the canebrake. We gather and die to live again.
That was done by Angela Davis Johnson. She did a few others. Very, very nice. Now, some speculate that the number of women on a ship was directly related to the propensity for a revolt, as women were oftentimes led up to the deck. They could see where arms were held, they could watch the crew, and that information was passed on to the men. Now, women were involved in, I'd say, all of the revolts. You find a woman, but not only were they involved in the revolts, they actually planned some revolts. One of my favorites is Solitude in Guadeloupe. And this is a really good video. This was done by an artist in South Africa. And so what happened after France had freed the Africans, Napoleon, of course, went back 8 years later and wanted to re-enslave them. So this revolt, here's Solitude. She was obviously very, very pregnant here. And she worked along with Delgras, and they led the people into the hills and lured the French into a fort and then blew it up. And over 400 French men were killed. Solitude survived. So she was captured and held until the baby was born. When the baby was born, the baby was given to her master, and then she was executed. Okay. So you had there were a lot of women. I was trying to find Cuba. You had Carlotta. You had Mary and St. Croix. You had a number of women who actually led. Let me show you. Who actually not only participated, but actually led. Now here's one in St. Croix. This was Mary. Mary actually planned the revolt. They started out as a peaceful demonstration that went bad, and then it turned into a major revolt. That was led by her and two other women. And then you have Carlotta in Cuba. So women really played. We all know of Nanny, of course, but these are other women. Let me show you. This is Carlotta. Her, along with, again, another woman and a man, led a revolt there. This is an artist's rendition of their revolt. Okay. Now, what about the Maroon community? I think the Maroon communities were actually incubators for many of the revolts. But I mean, there's two sides to this because, yes, they were instrumental in launching revolts, but also, let me go to Jamaica. But also what's going to happen is they were so successful that they were put in a situation to negotiate with the Europeans in some cases. And one of the stipulations was that they would have to return runaway Africans back into enslavement. But that was just a few cases that happened. But if it were not for the Maroons, you would not have had a lot of the revolts, nor would they have lasted as long because they were able to really hide out. For example, where is this? Curacao. Oh, here's one. I think this is a nice image I like. Here in Dominica, 1795, you have a war that's launched by the Maroons. And what happened was, in many cases, the West Indian regiments, slaves in uniforms, would have to come in and actually find them and stop the revolt. Now, what are some of the causes? Now, let me go to Jamaica. I think Jamaica had really the most revolts. You see, here, Jamaica has so many revolts, you can't even see the island. You know, there were many causes, and you have to think about slavery as being labor. So, yes, people say obviously they were revolting against being enslaved, but also in some cases they were having strikes. They wanted to negotiate to be able to go to the Sunday market or other privileges. And, sometimes it went bad. I think, Antigua, they just wanted to go to the Sunday market. And the master said, no, you can't. You have to stay. You have to work. And then what happens? It turns into a major revolt. Okay. Another one that really went bad, Jamaica, Sam Sharp Rebellion or the Baptist Revolt. And then also the numbers involved. This one involved almost 60,000 Africans. All they wanted was to negotiate their labor, but no, it was just to be a general strike, and they had some demands. And the demands were not met. The military was called in, and they were, a lot of them were killed. Another thing was if they weren't killed, some were sent to other islands if they weren't executed. Okay. Another thing I want to bring up is how did some of the revolts take place? Yes, some were spontaneous and may have lasted 1 or 2 days, but on the whole, a lot of these revolts lasted for periods of time. We all, of course, know Toussaint with Haiti, it lasted for years, but other ones lasted months before they were brought under control. Now, this is Tacky's revolt. This is Jamaican 1760. And all of these places where you see red is where they actually traveled to and revolted. That was a big thing. They would go from plantation to plantation and gather up people. This happened in Curacao under Tula. It happened in Barbados under Bussa. And one thing I found very fascinating is they had flags. They actually had a liberation flag that they carried with them as they marched. So let me show you 1733. St. John, this revolt, this revolt lasted for 7 months. This is the St. John revolt or the Akwamu revolt, right? Then in 1763, you had the Berbice revolt in Guyana. And some historians say that if it was not for the Maroons, this revolt would not have lasted as long. And if the Maroon communities were more united, because in a lot of places you had, and of course, we know in Jamaica, you had 2 different Maroon communities, but you would have different Maroon communities that did not work together. But if they were united, this one really would have been very successful. This one was almost as successful as Haiti. And it lasted for 13 months. And you could see with this map of all the different plantations that were involved. And some of the planned ones, they would like set a fire or send some type of signal out to other enslaved on other plantations, and then they would all come together and be a part. The other thing I want to consider is the role of culture. Okay. I think the most pronounced cultural involvement would be in Brazil, because here you had your Muslim community. And according to, again, some historians, Sylvian Diouf in particular, she holds that roughly all of the revolts in Brazil had Muslims involved. You can see here are some images. And here they had, in 1835, the Mali Revolt. Here it is. The Mali Revolt, you actually see them dressed in white, holding their weapons, going through the streets. Culture again. They also had little amulets. Some believed that they were going to be protected as they went into battle. And they moved along here. Now, Professor Hilary Beckles holds that the revolts were primarily aimed at destruction of property. They killed a lot of people. They killed a lot of white people. They destroyed a lot of property, but they also killed a lot of people. Now, what's new in historical circles is that now is claimed the Civil War was actually the largest slave revolt in America. Again, if you think about it, it was a war, it was labor. And these Africans left the land in droves and killed their masters. So, I don't know how you would measure a revolt, but what else would that be? And there's, like I show you here in the citations, there are a number of historians holding that view. Now, what of punishments? They were horrible. Absolutely. At some point, working on this, I just had to stop. Many of them, I do have images, but I was thinking about children looking at them, so I tried not to, let me see, put too many images, but oh no, this is that one. Oh, here's this one. O'Shea, Vincent O'Shea. A big thing was, of course, decapitation. And in Louisiana, I'll show you the image, they took the heads, the decapitated heads, and spiked them all the way down the road so you could see them. And of course, it was to discourage others. This was one of the most horrific ones, called breaking at the wheel, where each bone was broken, I'm sorry, one at a time. They were tortured. Sometimes after a revolt, when the enslaved really knew that they were going to be captured, they often killed themselves to not face this type of torture. That's how bad it was. And I'm thinking about Mount Misery in Nevis. A number of Africans jumped off a cliff to keep from being punished. Of course, the number one, where's New York, thing was burning at the stake and burning someone alive. Let me see, is this New York? That's yeah, burning at the stake was a big one. Okay, here it is. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Also, if you can look here, you'll see the number of revolts in the North. So we know that the North was very complicit in slavery. It just didn't happen in the South. We have a revolt here in Pennsylvania, Vermont, Montreal. This is actually one of my favorites. This was Marie Joseph Angelique, who burnt down most of Montreal, and they tortured her in unimaginable ways. Sometimes after revolt, especially in the Americas, they would just torture anybody Black who happened to be in the area. Okay, they would just round up people. And in some cases, the National Guard had to be sent in to stop the widespread torture and killing of Black people. So now let's kind of move over to the continent. Now, some will argue that the revolts were against European expansionism and colonialism. However, I would add that you had slavery on the continent, big time slavery. Right here in South Africa, this was a major exit point for African people. And if African people did not comply, they were often annihilated. Now, we talk about African complicity in the slave trade. The latest figures, which might be a little large, would be up to 40% of African people participated in the extraction of African people. But also we have to break that down a little bit more. How many were doing it under duress? And also there was a lot of conflict on the continent between different groups, and the Europeans knew how to play one against the other and add supplies, arms to one group so that they could subdue another. So there are a lot of intricacies. We can't just say wholesale that Africans just sold us into slavery. That is not correct. This one is in South Africa. This is one of the saddest ones. This was the Zulu. Thousands of Zulu were killed. And if you see here the red, they killed so many Zulu people that the Zambezi River turned red with blood. And the Afrikaans celebrate this. They have a museum just to celebrate this occasion of killing all of these. And I visited that museum, and I just sat in the front of it and just cried. And the leader told me, it's just history. But we see not only were African people, where's Uganda? Just taken out, there was massive genocide if they didn't participate. This is Uganda in 1872. Look, the British reduced their population from 2.5 million down to 400,000. 400,000. And and they resisted, tried to resist. All right. And let me show. And then in Ghana, we have, okay, let me see. Again, you had the wars between the different groups against the Europeans, against the British. Here's a good image. So we had resistance on the continent and off. Here in Tanzania, let me see, which is this one? Okay, that's the Mahi Mahi Rebellion, but also around here. Now, let's look at some outliers. Here we have in Indonesia, Sumatra, slave in uniform. So I found this very, very interesting. I think Gerald Horne does the best job of analyzing the role of Africans in the military. It was very complicated because the Europeans did not have enough whites to conscript. They got Africans. So then the colonists were afraid that the Africans were going to turn on them. And even though they were in the military, they were still slaves. I mean, they still had that status. So they could be put back in slavery anytime. But what this did was it created a number of mutinies. This is just one of many of Africans because of the way they were treated. Of course, they weren't paid well or at all. They were whipped. There's one in let me see. Oh, Brazil, Felisberto. He was actually whipped on a ship, and that led to a major revolt there that led to them being treated better. But this is really interesting in terms of, and I'm thinking too of Bus in Barbados. You can tell that's my favorite place. When the Africans who were revolting, when they saw these troops come in the West Indian Regiment, they thought, oh wow, this is it. We're going to win, right? And what happens? They turned on them and killed them. Okay. Now, so this is the page that's about the project, how I got started. I told you about the language. And I started this project while I was working at Scribe Video on my documentary, Africa's Not a Zoo. Shameless plug. You can see it at drifewilliams.com on the displacement of African people from their land to create game reserves. And I said to my technical assistant at the time, Muti, I said, I really want to do something on slave revolts. And at that time, I'm thinking, maybe 20, 30, I had no idea what I was stepping into. So they showed me how to do a Google map and I got started. Then I brought a student in to help. And I know this project is ancestral driven because after I completed about 250 PowerPoints, I really wasn't tired. But then when I realized what I did, I started crying. I was exasperated. I'm like, oh no, I can't do anymore. And then in March of 2019, I invited some of my friends over and had an audio party. And I had them do voiceovers to we can do about 45 of the PowerPoints. And I had people speak, of course, in their own words. I had a Swahili brother from Tanzania, a Haitian, Ugandan. I had two Puerto Rican brothers talk about the revolt there. There, at the time, I was president of African Heritage Studies Association, so I was able to upload it on the site. I put it up March 1929, and up to 2023, I had 236,000 views. Then I applied for ACLS, American Council of Learned Societies, Mellon Grant to enhance the map and make the markers more interactive. And I was awarded $40,000 to do that. So that's how I was able to do this website and hire the graphic artist. Of course, I had the people at Delaware County Community College who helped me. George is on now helping me. Let me see. There's a lot of analysis in there of these revolts. Now, one thing was actually finding the information. I used two foundational texts, Herbert Aptheker, American Negro Revolts, and Junius Rodriguez, Encyclopedia of Slave Revolts. And then from there, I used archival information from the Blockson collection at Temple University, and of course, the Schoenberg in New York. But a lot of the information was hidden because, of course, the slave owners did not want the slaves to find out about it. And they had a network. They could find things out. So it's really in some instances, I had to travel to places. For instance, in Guadeloupe, I had 2 revolts, and then I visited there and found 2 more. Okay. Brazil's another case. I had about 4 in Brazil, but when I went to Brazil, I found 1 more. I didn't put it here because I have 3 different interpretations of what happened there. So that needs more research. And so also right here, so here's where the heads of the people were put on the road. And so the question is asked, why would people do this? And some authors call slavery a social death. It's a social death. You don't have any rights. You can be killed. You can be raped. You can be castrated at any time. And no one would care. No one would know that you're even gone. You don't exist. So the process of planning and implementing a revolt is cathartic. It's a way of gaining control over your humaneness. You know, Frantz Fanon talks about this in The Wretched of the Earth. It's a way to be liberated from your physical conditions into a higher realm. So this is why, in many cases, these ancestors risked their lives to do this. And the revolts changed the course of enslavement. It really did. Changed many dynamics of slavery, and of course led to the end, technically, of the trade in America. It was 1808, and before that in Britain, because they were afraid to bring in too many more Blacks. One author says the ship revolts are responsible for saving millions of Africans, millions of them. No, there was one ship revolt in Madagascar. It was so deadly, and the Africans did get away. They killed the entire crew that the Europeans didn't want to go there anymore. You know, they got a bad rap. They're like, no, we're not going there. So they played a major role in ending enslavement. And then I have a script. Okay, my last team. So of course, here I am, creator. Muti Reed is my artist and tech assistant who started me on Google Map. Then Jenna was the first student I brought in. Tina and Lori from Delco helped. Tia was mostly emotional support. Every time I wanted to jump off the roof, she talked me down. Ryan is from Trinidad and Tobago. And as you go to the map, I encourage you to really look at the ones in Trinidad and Tobago. He did a wonderful job of explaining those revolts. Angela Davis Johnson did the video I showed you. Amanda did my video. Here's Josh. He did Mary Bradley, the Zorro conspiracy in Puerto Rico. This is Ronald. I saw Ronald's work in a documentary, and I'm like, I have to have this boy. And I thought he lived in Chicago. Ronald lives in South Africa. And I brought him into the project. Again, if you look on the homepage, you have to look at Three Finger Jack. And he's also a sculptor. And if you look at the Nanny Revolt, you will see how he did a sculpture, a bust of Nanny's head, and he recorded it for the Revolt. Erica did an image. She's an artist, a local artist who did an image of Queen and Boja. Now, of course, many mistakes were made along the way, but one I did, major snafu. I was so into doing the PowerPoints that I was pulling images from everywhere without any citations. So I had to bring in students to do what we call a reverse image search and find the citations. These students looked up over 600 images. So that was Godwin. When Godwin left me, he's now at Temple. Here's Nafis. He's still with me, but he is a student at Penn State now. Prophet, this is Prophet. He's still with me. I told Prophet, I said, I don't know how the Smithsonian found my map. And Prophet said, God. Here we have Edison. He's now at Georgia Tech, and Harsim Ron, we call him Ashu. He's still with me doing social media. And here's the famous Stephen, who did the graphic and web designer. And I talked to Stephen today, and he too asked me, Stephen said, how did you find me? And it was so interesting because I went to Upwords online to try to find some help. And I went on twice. I couldn't find anybody. I'm like, aren't any Black people doing these things? Aren't any Black people doing these things? And went on again. I couldn't find anybody. And so I said, well, I'll get a woman. I want somebody else here. Went on a third time, and Steven's little face popped up. And he told me today that it was just perfect timing. He was having a family crisis, and he really needed some financial help. And I was able to bring him in, and you could see the beautiful job he did on this website. Here are my narrators. These are all the people who did the voiceovers for me. Some did more than one or two. And so I want to thank them. And I also want to really want to do a separate shout out to Dr. Kalinda Eaton. She's the one who told me that, Ife, you're doing a digital humanities project and you need to apply for some money. And I did. And I received the ACLS as mentioned. And then I was looking at this project and I thought, the resistance to colonialism and segregation, some argue that it's the same, the conditions were the same as in slavery. Yes and no. There, some instances, yes. So I decided to do a second project on resistance to colonialism and segregation from 1940 to 1994. And I applied for a National Endowment of the Humanities grant, and I just received $150,000 to do that map. So that map will be uploaded to this site in December of 2025. Mm-hmm. And so now that you've all registered and I have your emails, I will let you know when that project is done. Now, let me see. I am going to stop share. Let me get a little closer. Oh, I'm going to bring in Tia. Where's Tia? All right. Were there any questions in the chat?
Yes, we have a couple of questions.
Okay.
By Olivia Flarick.
Okay.
And Olivia wants to know how educators are using the map in their classrooms.
Okay, that's a very good. That's from Olivia Flork, one of my colleagues at Delaware County Community College. Thanks for that question, Olivia. Yes. For the second map, I'm really focusing on developing curriculum. For this map, I did not, but I tried to make it so that people can show it in their classroom. Again, that's why I told you I left out some of the punishments for some of the younger viewers. I do have a teacher, Jamila French, told me that she uses it in her classroom when she discusses revolts. Some of my other colleagues like to use the map when they do revolts to have the students go in and identify. But I am going to develop more curriculum for the classroom. Have another question?
Okay, question number 2 is from N. Morris, and he wants to know, what are the plans to broaden the website or maybe connect slave voyages as a continuation, the history of the people stolen from Africa? And then part 2 is, how can we help support you?
Oh, thank you.
Website.
So are you talking about the Slave Voyages project? That if I had $1 million, this site would really look like the Slave Voyages project. You have to go online and see that. And it's kind of ironic because I didn't mention I did go to University of Penn in their Price Lab of Digital Humanities for some guidance. And the director there, Stu Werner, worked with people on that Slave Voyages. So it kind of came together. But I think what's going to happen, the more money, the more, technical you can make the site, it could bring more people in, do that. So if I get more grant money to come back to that, then I would. How I could be supported is if you just take, I didn't show you, if you take the address blackslaverevolts.org and send it out to everybody and ask them to look at the site. And just like I said, because the other one was 236,000 views in a short period of time. Do you have another one?
Yes. Do you have any bibliography for the project? And that's from Claude Barnes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hi, Claude. One of my classmates from Clark Atlanta University. Oh, yes. Everyone that you open has citations. Everyone. And each image has citations. Let me put the site up. Go ahead.
Only the last one is someone needs registration again. But we have many comments.
Okay.
Some congratulations, phenomenal. Let me see. This is very impactful and very inspirational. Thank you for your work and for developing the site. The sound design is also quite beautiful.
Oh. Trying to get, there it is. There it is. Okay.
Phenomenal research. I wish I had this resource before I retired. That was Charles.
Was that from you?
No, that was Claude Barnes.
Okay.
This is scholarship.
Thank you very much.
Louis Masai.
Oh, Louis Masai. And that's where I got my start at Scribe Video. Shout out to Louis. Yes,
it's also
yes.
a vision. Thank you for this work.
Yes, thank you so much.
Beautiful job, wonderful. Thank you for doing the work. That's Aisha.
All right.
And
everybody liked it. Y'all liked it? Okay, great, great. Yes. So there is it's up and running and it's mobile friendly. You can just go on your phone. So in your supermarket and you're talking to somebody, you can just whip out your phone, go to Black Slave Revolts and scan and scroll up and show them. And if you want to contact me or information about any of the artists, once you look at some of the videos, and I have each artist's name under their work, under their animations, you can just email blackdiasporamaps@gmail.com and I'll make sure that they get the information. You can also visit my website, drifewilliams.com, and stay in touch. And I want to thank you. I was getting ready to close out. Is it?
One more question.
Okay.
What do you want the children of the diaspora to take from this, and as they look through all the beautiful history?
Oh man, this is about empowerment. It's about empowerment and knowing that the same DNA that flowed in our ancestors who staged these revolts flows in us. It's a way to get rid of this shame. No, we were not happy on a plantation. No, we were not cowed down. We fought at every instance. And this warrior spirit needs to be integrated and internalized by our youth as we move ahead. So I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I don't want to hold you hostage. And please go to the site, go through as many revolts as you can and enjoy it. Thank you so much.